Good evening and welcome to another episode of Apolitically Incorrect Guyana. My name is Kian Jabour and I'm here alongside Timothy Jonas this evening.
Good evening, everyone.
Yeah, and we have an interesting show because there has been some changes to our political lives. Not big changes, but I think we have a little bit of air to clear here tonight. But with regards to ANUG and where we stand, we're going to get into that in 2 seconds. But what is two things, some housework first is the number on the screen there is 231-2982, and I have a telephone right in front of me here. You guys are welcome to call at any point and ask some questions, and we are more than happy to discuss anything that's on your minds this evening. Hopefully they relate to the topics, but we'll do our best. We're here to listen. Before that, I also want to state that, in case you don't know, registration has opened for the 100,000. All right? Are you over 18?
Barely.
Barely. You're lucky, like at January 1st or something, right? So Tim, over 18 years old, like many of us out there, we are all eligible for the $100,000 cash grant. Now, I want to make something clear to everyone. The main opposition, APNU AFC, has been saying, we ain't collecting this money. This is nonsense. I know people...
they said that?
Yes, there has. Well, not the party's official statement, but people in association with, if you know what I mean.
Wow.
And then the part that you always pay closer attention to is that when no one responds to say, wait a second, no, you should go, I get... that's the side I get upset with. You know how information moves. You know that rumors can flow. You know that, misinformation can be spread. As the organization and the executive body or, whoever's kind of managing at the time, it's their job to make sure that things are very straightforward and understood and clear. And 90% of the time that, solves most of the problems. But when people don't respond, you clearly, one, in my opinion, don't have what's in the best interest of the people at heart. And then two, it's an agenda and it has its political, ramifications to keep people poor. And I can go on and on about how these two parties want to keep this country poor. And the reality is, I think the socially responsible thing to do, and I keep saying this about in any situation when it comes to the PPP and the PNC, your goal, which they have both proven the opposite of, is to make sure all Guyanese are continuing to progress. And how they go about doing that is, I think, what is always left to question and to criticism, because they paint a beautiful picture, like we build in bridge and we build in roads, so everybody gaining. Look, we give you $100,000, so your life must be getting better. And everybody sits down there and buys into this idea. And for those that don't know any better, they believe it. Because for that very short stint, when they collect that 100,000, they are, and this is not insulting anybody, it's just the reality. They are so desperate for that money that brings that immediate little relief of, I don't need to worry about where I'm getting food from today, tomorrow, the next day. Thank you, PPP, or thank you, government.
If your average salary in the public service is about $125,000,
right,
$100,000 is a lot of money.
That's a lot of money.
A whole month salary.
Yes.
So it's also clever to pay it at Christmas time, because Christmas time is also the time that the public servants tend to get their increase, and it's often paid retroactively.
Yeah.
So a lot of public servants may see quite a nice, well, nice is relatively speaking, quite a nice check in their pocket because it's Christmas time.
Yeah.
So it looks good, it glows.
Yeah.
And that makes it easy to look past the failings in the system and the fact that if you think about the administrative structure to create and implement this thing, how much that must cost. Yeah. And if it's a one-off, well, then again, you're still taking crumbs from the table arbitrarily at the whim of the master. And it shouldn't be like that. As you know, I always talk about systems. There should be a system that's recognizable and transparent, and everybody understands permanently how it works.
Yeah.
The question will come up, do we get another 100,000 next year or not? Nobody knows, because you've just received largesse from the master.
So you're going to run behind the master with your hand out open for the next.
And there's no dignity. There's no dignity when you have an ad hoc system of leadership. No rules, just
No
arbitrariness.
systems. Just you know,
no dignity.
So I actually brought up this conversation on my Facebook recently, where I had stated, you know, Tim, it's horrible, partner. There's no there. I can't say nothing. That's extreme. I keep saying that. If I keep saying it, it's not going to have an effect. It hurts. It genuinely hurts my heart every month, every year to watch pensioners line up for their pension books or line up for their pension. It is so, Tim, I don't even know. It's almost inhumane.
It's demeaning.
Oh my gosh.
And those are systems that can be improved.
Yes.
And the thing is that if this is done properly so that people are encouraged to register for NIS to get bank accounts.
Right.
It can be done through the banking system. They don't even have to leave their home.
Yeah.
They go online, they check their phone, everybody has a phone, and you see that your money has landed in your bank account. You haven't even left your house.
Yeah. And like most countries.
It's easy to do.
Absolutely. Like most countries, though, bear in mind, these things can happen simultaneously. What I mean by that is in countries around the world, like Guyana, there are those that are able and capable of registering for direct deposit, you know, registering their NIS, working with their, you know, TIN number, whatever the system is that's set up. And those people will benefit very quickly and, you know, through their, you know, banking system or whatever. But this system can also be put in place where those who, you know, everybody ain't got a phone, for example, you know, or elder people, you know, may not, you know, be that up to date with technology. Okay. So yes, there's still the option of going in and doing it physically.
But if you give them, those who have the technology, if you give them that option,
90% of the problem gone.
Then the 10% who cannot use it, make a much shorter line, lining up at the post office for their cash.
It's like in Canada. Last time I was in Canada, I went into the bank to open an account. There is never anyone in the bank because everyone banks online now. Yes. And what happens, just so you know, just how these things work in progress, is that I would, for example, go and open up a direct deposit account for my elderly mother. So I would set her up so that her account is there and she got her little phone, and I make sure that, you know, she has her laptop or tablet, which they're watching their movies on anyway, and they're able to access their money and, you know, pay bills online, whether it be MMG or whatever it is that you want to do. So these things are right there. It's almost like they're just not wanting to do it. Why?
I wish I knew why. Because it's easy to do. This isn't the first time. It's happening almost everywhere else in the world, certainly in the first world. Throughout the islands, it's happening. Mm-hmm. So there's no reason it shouldn't be happening here.
Okay.
Is it that you like to see people lining up with their hand outstretched, asking for something, so you can take a photograph and say, look how much good we're doing? Like, maybe that's it. Maybe it's the photo op.
Yeah.
But if we keep demeaning our citizens, if we keep robbing them of their dignity, that is not leadership. That is not how to run the country.
Agreed. I'm also I'm gonna say something, and I'm gonna make this very clear before I say it. I'm not saying anybody should do this. I am not encouraging anybody to this. I'm just stating something that I have done and I am doing. I have taken my $100,000 and I've invested it. Okay? I've invested it in something volatile because I have I'm going to sit there and say I have the luxury to do it, right? And it's something simple. It's something that people, you know, I think anywhere else in the world that have a stable income, that are, you know, are living a comfortable life would have done, right? Let me clear here. I invested in cryptocurrency, all right? I just took the money and I said, you know what, let me put this into something that hopefully can grow over time because I don't need this cash right away. And I'm not trying to sound, you know, privileged or anything, but I figure that is what the idea should be for this 100,000, right? Everyone that's collecting this free money, again, free money, because this money is already our own, and you're collecting this 100,000 for those that are worried, or for those that need this money. And I'm just pointing out the flaw here. I'm pointing out the issue here, not the flaw, but the issue here. How many people can afford to do that?
Well, let me tell you, as an older generation, I'm not doing that.
No, no problem.
But I do.
What would you do with your 100,000, just out of curiosity?
No, well, I'm not going to collect it because I have said that I really think it needs to be directed to the people at the bottom who need it the most. So,
but my question is, there is no current system that the government has stated that anybody who doesn't collect money, they can give it to the poor.
I would encourage every Guyanese to go and collect it. I'm not preaching to anybody, but ask me a question.
Okay.
This is just for me personally.
Okay.
But what I want to point out is that I like your idea that the money that is made available to those people who need it, there should be this option of investment. And I really like the model that, I think it's Modi that created it, but it's now being applied in India, where a child born in India, a bank account is opened for him and a sum of money is put into that account every month. So that some of that money is available for his parents to access for him, for the child, but some of that money remains in the bank, accumulates interest, so that when that child reaches majority, reaches 18, there is a nest egg, there is a lump sum that he can use for education, to start a business, for something like that. And it puts more money in the banking system. It gives him an expectation, it gives the child an expectation that he has an opportunity. He's not condemned to abject poverty forever. And it immediately gives him a boost, a jump start. And I think Guyanese need that. I would like to see those youngsters that when you go to Madia and you go to on the East Bank as you Mara and you go to the country areas where you see so much unemployment and so much poverty, if those youths had that expectation that first of all there's a sum of money that's coming from NIS that their parents can access to put them through school, make sure they're fed and clothed and housed through school, if the school system was good enough to holistically care for them and ensure that they're equipped to have a job and to work in that job efficiently, then when they leave school, if they have a lump sum that they could say, man, I'm going to use this to pay for university, or I'm going to use this to start my own business, the expectation already lifts them and makes them a middle-class citizen with dignity, rather than someone who continues.
And they can start planning, right?
So if it can happen in a country like India with 1.2 billion, certainly it could happen in our little country where our GDP is the highest in the world, and we've got more money than we know what to do with.
Fastest growing.
And I like the investment aspect of what you're talking about, so that opportunity is there and they see something growing that belongs to them that they can access for their own benefit when they get to adulthood.
No, we need to do that. It's the key. And you know what's fantastic? I mean, again, getting back to me being a young businessman and starting off, and I actually had a business in Canada as well. And what's interesting about that is how I tell this story just very quickly because it's always something that I think is just very interesting to me, because when I think of my life experience and where I am now. So I remember as a child, I was in high school, just finishing high school in Canada, and I was just graduating, and I decided, you know what, I need a little bit extra money. So I was very entrepreneurial from the beginning, and I decided I'm going to start a landscaping business with my neighbor over the road, me and my partner. So we said, man, we young, able-bodied, we got plenty of old people living around the area, single mothers, whoever, people that just ain't got time to go and clean up their garden. And how it works over there in Canada is winter, and then, spring, everything needs to be cleaned up, and then fall, leaves need to be, so just all through the year, there's just little bits of work. So I said, man, let me start this business. So we go and print out little flyers all over the place, and we put them up on everybody with our house cell phone, with our phone number at home. So everybody, all my brothers and sisters, hello, hi, is this the landscaping business? No, nobody like that. Click. Anyways, nonetheless, we got some jobs. Word spread. We started getting some business. So we did a little bit of work and more manual labor. And here's what was amazing. A couple months into this business, I remember a friend of mine said, you guys should go and open a bank account. Okay? They're starting a business. So what I did is I went on, this is years ago too, I went online and I registered my business. I went into the bank, a commercial bank, regular small commercial bank, and I showed them my documents. Look, I registered my business online. Here's my little setup. You know that after being in that bank for less than an hour, they offered me as a little 16, 17, 18, I can't remember how old I was, over $10,000 in a line of credit for me to go with my little business. And here's what was amazing. They sat, luckily the bank was in my neighborhood and I went to school with the loans officer. So he was able to talk to me. So he's like, you guys are very young, starting something. This 10,000 Canadian that we're giving you guys on this credit card, you guys can spend how you want, because what's amazing about the system is if you guys spend this money and you fail and your business goes under, this 10,000 limit is what the government of Canada ensures for us commercial banks to invest in small businesses. So we expect 90% of you guys to fail, but the bank is not taking the risk. We are just encouraged to give you guys the money, so you have this little bit of money to start.
Once you show a good business plan.
Well, so, you register,
So let's look at that
your business
again.
plan. Correct.
Take this Guyanese youngster who has been developing this nest egg because money has been going into the account all the time. He reaches 18, he's finished school, he does well in school. He does well in his CXC and his A levels. He's now ready to go into the job market or to go to university or to start his business. So he has his business model. He goes to the bank and he says, here, I have a nest egg of so many million Guyana dollars. This is my business model. The bank likes it, they approve it. And if there is a system that the government, as in Canada, then insures the banks and also gives the banks tax exemptions and tax privileges, tax write-offs for these small startup loans.
Correct. No,
so that the bank is protected.
Correct.
You then have an opportunity to increase that nest egg just by showing the good business sense and the good business model and the ability so that he has an even better startup.
Yeah.
These are systems that should be available and should be transparent and should be as part of a system. So you know it's there.
Correct.
It's not there.
Correct.
What we got is lining up and handouts and crumbs from the table and
unsurety, inconsistency,
envelopes that are an accounting disaster. If we don't show respect for systems and start implementing systems that work, we will not move from where we are, which will be dire poverty at the bottom and the small minority of family and friends getting horrendously rich at the top. And we are seeing that gap. We're seeing that economic gap widening. Now, it's funny you say that because I know you want to talk about elitism and that kind of thing, but I also have my story from university days, and I used to work too. So when I left high school, the first thing I did was I got a job at the UG library because I was going to go into UG, and they had this summer job available. So I went and spent a couple months there setting up books as it's not a librarian, it doesn't have that stature, but one of the little clerks inside there, that's what I did. My old lady had a P50 that she used to ride around in the 70s and 80s. Well, I inherited that. So that's how I got up to UG. After a while, I started very briefly, but I did some work as a supervisor at a local guard service. So I used to go around in the middle of the night, checking on the guards and helping out and that kind of thing. So you're doing all of this to get an extra $1 to pay for your gas, to pay for your books, to pay for your drinks too.
Lineman, you're young.
And all of that is part of the effort to get ahead so that hopefully at the end of the day you can look back and claim some kind of success. But it is to create the atmosphere and to nurture our youngsters so that they are enabled to do these things and they have a prospect. They are looking at some light at the end of the tunnel that they will succeed. And if you don't have that, then they are condemned and our jails will stay full, our crime rate will stay high, we'll have insane drivers on the road, and we will continue where we are now. So we have to create those opportunities, but as part of a system, not as part of us. Exactly.
You know, key stuff here. All right. We're going to, just to finish this topic, guys, please go and collect your 100,000. Okay? You've heard of it. We actually just spoke to somebody here. They said it took 5 minutes to do, depending on the location, obviously. I know, more and more opening up and popping up for 2 days here, 2 days there. So wherever, for some reason, that information is so tricky. Because I myself, my advice, I don't think you need to worry about which location you go to. Because I don't think it's a neighborhood address type thing. You can't come here because you don't live here. So I think you honestly just find a registration point and go in there. It takes 5 minutes. They said is, ID card or passport, and they ask you your relationship status, and then you collect your stuff.
That's what I heard.
Yeah, rumor has it. Nonetheless, so please, guys, go and register. It's a free 100,000, and it's your money already. Okay, this is not the government's money. Nobody doing you a favor. This is your money. Okay, don't think that anybody's here to, you owe anybody for this. This is your money. Go and collect it. Okay,
definitely go and get your money.
Yeah. I'm gonna change topics now.
Good.
Well, ANUG is currently.
We had internal elections. Been in the news, and there have been some developments that need to be discussed.
So ANUG is a political organization that Tim and I are part of. Tim was one of the founding members. I quickly joined after and was part of the launching of the party and so on. But nonetheless, we've been there from day one, and we are still currently members of ANUG. And we had our internal elections recently, in which Tim and I both opted not to be in this current executive. So before I speak any more about ANUG, Tim, I want you to please discuss
Well, thanks. That's important because a lot of questions have been asked, and we are such a divided and polarized people. So I want to give you a brief history of how this thing started in the first place and what the underlying philosophy is. Now, I was an AFC man from the beginning, supported AFC in 06, 2011, quarreled when they joined with APNU, but still voted for them in 2015. But my fear in 2015 was realized very quickly. AFC was subsumed and all the excesses of the PNC when they were in power. AFC did nothing to draw a line in the sand and say, we have to protect our supporters and we have to protect the citizens. And the PNC excesses went unopposed when they were in government. So they lost my support. But it was worse than that, you see, because if the status quo continued, then AFC and PNC would go into the 2020 election again and would probably win, because the independent voters who supported AFC as the middle ground wouldn't have anywhere to go to. They wouldn't have a home. They'd lost the home that had previously been represented by AFC. So, well, let me tell you exactly what happened. I invited some people to my home for dinner. I can't tell you who, because there is confidentiality there. And part of the agreement was it would be confidential. But among those people, you will know, ANOG started with me, Ralph Ramkaran, Henry Jeffrey. There were two other people who were immediately part of it and who soon left, Terence Campbell and Benny Sankar. I criticize neither of them, but they left shortly after. Immediately after that, we started bringing in, Kian was one of the first that came in after that as we grew. But the reason that ANOG started was that we said to AFC, us AFC people, remember there's no ANOG at the time, we said to AFC, y'all are going about this wrong, y'all are not stopping the excesses of the PNC, and if you don't do something right, we are going to have to try to replace you. And that's what we tried to do. So in 2018, we had the discussion. In 2019, we started up because AFC didn't give us the time of day. And in 2019, we started rolling. The philosophy of ANOG from the beginning was it will not join up with either of the two parties as AFC did to its own detriment, because it recognized that there is a middle ground of voters who recognize the harm in the two parties. And it also recognized that the two parties are so equally balanced that it may be that group of middle line, moderate voters who reject ethnic voting might have the swing in parliament. And that's the philosophy. That is the underlying philosophy. So folk came in, and this is what happened. The PNC supporters cussed us down and tried to poke holes in both the idea, the philosophy, and also the individuals. So you heard about people with skeletons in their cupboards. They tried to find skeletons that didn't exist. They invented skeletons. The attacks that were made personally from PNC folk and from PPP folk were ridiculous. But that's part of the game, and you got to move ahead. And you have to roll with those punches. And I know that everybody listening here is well aware of vitriolic attacks launched personally at the individuals of ANOG because they felt that this group is not supporting their side. All well and good. To me, what was good was that the attacks came from the PPP folk equally with the PNC folk. So it meant we were holding a pretty good middle ground. The PPP folk was saying, these folk are going to join up with the PNC just like everybody else. And the PNC folk were saying, these people are supporting the corrupt PPP and supporting their attempts to stay in power and all that. Fine, we're holding that middle ground. But what is critically important for folk to understand is that if any group, any party is to be an institution, rather than just a group of people rallying behind some single person, the systems have to exist and the systems have to be in place. And in fact, when ANOG's rules were created, one of the clauses that I threw in, that I wanted to introduce, and Ralph agreed immediately, came from the history of FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. He served 3 terms in office in the U.S. And after his 3rd term, the U.S. powers, Senate and Congress, immediately passed a law that the president can't sit for more than 2 terms. We got a call. Yes,
why not, right? Good evening. Thank you for calling. How are you? I don't think this call is for us.
I don't think so.
I'm sorry, you are not allowed to complete your call as dialed.
I think you guys need to check in on that.
So,
you need to call the marshal's office.
Because of the lesson learned from Roosevelt staying in office for 3 terms, and we had learned a similar lesson when in the 2000s we revised the Constitution to say you can only stay in office in the presidency for 2 terms. We recognize that if we were to be an institution, an organization, and if the organization and the system was to be more important.
Sorry, Tim.
You want to try again?
Yeah, you can try again. Hopefully it's not the court, the Guyana courts. Good evening. Hello.
Oh, good day.
Oh, great. A real caller. How are you?
Somebody just called asking for a taxi.
Hi.
Can you
This is the diaspora. Are you hearing me clear?
say again, sorry?
Are you hearing me clear?
Yeah, clear.
Program?
Yeah, absolutely. We can hear you.
Okay. I think the problem with AMU in terms of the law is speaking about is that if I'm sure Leonard Schumann was a part of that party as an MP, as an opposition MP. So what the Guyanese public was really focused about is that Leonard Schumann, I think, was basically have a job with the government and also at the same time criticizing the government. So that was basically contradictory to the parliament. So basically people who are on the ground want to know how you could become an opposition in the parliament, MP, and still holding a government post or a government advisor. So that was the whole controversy and the loss of trust in the party.
Thank you for that. And let me answer that if you don't mind.
In a case like that, there has to be basically impartial. If you are opposition, no line with the government, no job, nothing.
Right.
Be an opposition and work for the best interest of all Guyanese.
I agree with you, and you're absolutely right. And let me answer you.
Yeah, thanks. We can answer no. Just listen. Thank you for that.
So we went into this, and our underlying philosophy is you don't join up with either side. It was made a promise to the people, one of the first pillars of ANOG. You do not join up with either side. Now, there are a couple things that need to be discussed here, and the caller has raised a point that's important. But caller, I agree entirely with you that if somebody from a third party goes into parliament, they must not be seen to be aligned to either of the 2 big parties. They must be independent, and they must be discussing it all the time. Leonard Schumann was never a member of ANOG. He is a separate party. And I'm going to explain that system because you just raised it, and it's an important part of our discussion. To get a seat in parliament, you need about 6,000 votes, 5,000, 6,000 votes. If you divide the number of people voting in the country by 65 seats in parliament, you realize the maths means if you get 5,000 votes, you get a seat in parliament. There's also a system in the Constitution that allows small parties that are separate parties, they're not the same party, they're separate, to agree that they will count their votes together. So if you vote for Lennox, that's a vote for the joinder. If you vote for TNM, that's a vote for the joinder. If you vote for ANOG, it's a vote for the joinder. And in 2020, what happened is that the 3 parties that agreed to do this together got slightly over 5,000 votes and therefore got a seat. It didn't mean that they joined up or that their philosophy was the same. It meant that they recognized that they were small and might not alone be able to get a seat. So they pooled their votes. And that's what happened. And Lennox, being the representative of the party that got most out of those 3, he should be in parliament. And that's the system that we agreed to. It was a gentleman's agreement. It was called a memorandum of understanding because everybody knew you couldn't go to court to enforce this thing. It wasn't enforceable. It was a gentleman's handshake agreement. But don't be mistaken to think that Lennox Schumann was ever a part of ANOG or ever shared ANOG's principles. Lennox Schumann has his own party, he has his own approach, and I don't answer for him, and I don't hold brief for him. I don't pretend to defend him. He will defend himself. He has shown himself to be honest and keep his word in some regards, and I don't criticize him. But I do hear what you say, that the appearances are he's working for the PPP. He may be in with the PPP right now. I don't know. I'm not going to pronounce on that because I don't speak for Lennox. Lennox is not ANOG. Never has been. And I want to make that very, very clear. Similarly, Asha Kisoon, who is the representative of the third party, is not ANOG, is not a member of ANOG. And in 2020, when we were doing this, had never been at that time a part of ANOG. A separate party, separate people. All they did is they agreed that they would count their votes together to see if they could reach the 5,000 votes to get a seat. That's all. So this takes us to the discussion about Parliament, because you're right. I've heard the idea behind ANOG.
Sorry, I'm enjoying the questions just because
Yes,
I think
please
if
bring them in.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for calling.
Kindly contact the commercial office.
Again, I really think you guys need to contact the courts of Guyana, Robbie. I think they keep calling. It seems important. Okay.
Now, recognizing that we're not going to win an election, at the time in 2020, ANOG's approach was to hope that the seats we got...
They coming in between. I got to try.
Yes, you bring them in, that's fine.
Hello, good evening. Hello? Sorry, not hearing at the moment. Go ahead.
We agreed that if we got any seat, or if we got seats, we were hoping that the seat would be a swing vote in Parliament.
Hello, good evening. Hello?
Yeah, I'm back.
Yes.
I listened to what you were saying, Jonas, but at the same time, you need to understand that your party, Anna, would have to set some clear principles and guidelines in terms of those other small parties that join in, because at the end of the day, the nation would look at that small party as a coalition, meaning with others. And if you all have one principle in terms of not aligning with the two big parties, and then someone like Kisoon or Lennox Schumann repeat that same ideology back into the next election, it would discourage your supporters. So you have to make it clear that if any other small party come with you all, you must have principles and guidelines, or else it would be a contradiction to the policy that ANOC stands for, as opposed to those other parties who joined in order to get that total 5,000 votes. Today is what confused the nation. They were very confused in terms of, oh, you have one policy and they have another policy, and they with PPP in terms of that. So you have to fix that, or else you would be in chaos into the next election.
Agreed. I appreciate your feedback as well. Thank you for calling and raising
again,
your concern.
I hope I'm making it clear now, because your point is well made, that if somebody goes in and they're unsure, that's a problem. Mm-hmm. I don't think anyone was unsure in 2020. People went in and they voted for Lennox or they voted for ANOG. They didn't vote for both. It was a different place to put your X. But I hope I'm making it clear now, because I can only speak for ANOG at the time in 2020. I can't speak for ANOG now. And I'll explain that as well. So ANOG was separate and Lennox was never a part of ANOG. Mm-hmm. And therefore we can't speak for ANOG, and I hope I'm making it clear now. Good. So the intention at the time, the hope, and it was a faint hope, but it was a hope, we were trying our best for it, was that we would get a swing vote. It didn't happen. The PPP won 33 seats, and therefore the PPP controlled Parliament from 2020 and control it now. Hopefully that will change this year, next year, when we have the next elections. Hopefully whichever the two large parties wins, will win a minority. Because although I don't speak for ANOG, me personally, Tim Jonas, that is my hope. That is what I think is the only hope for Guyana. So, because when we created ANOG, we felt that the institution needed to be bigger and more solid and more stable and recognizable, rather than any individual, we put in the system that you only hold a seat for a period of time. And this elections, we saw we were going into an election cycle. And as usual in any country, and especially in Guyana, people's attention becomes riveted to the politics going into elections. So a group that is young and energetic and dynamic is now at the helm of the executive in ANOG. And Kian and I talked about it. And we made a decision that in this program where we are able to meet people and discuss with people, we would actually have more freedom if we are not speaking on behalf of ANOG, but we are discussing politics in a way that promotes third parties and hopefully ensures a minority government, however it happens. So we have that freedom. And the institution, ANOG has become an institution. I would challenge anybody to tell me when last there was an announcement of WPA internal elections when a new executive was appointed for WPA or
LJP or TNM or any of them.
GAP.
Yeah.
The other day I saw there was a meeting with AFC. I would challenge anybody to show that these parties exist as real institutions, or if they're just pretending. Because I can tell you, we had an elections last Saturday, an internal ANOG elections, and a new executive was appointed by a democratic process where there were nominations. The nominations were seconded, and the people who accepted the nominations were elected into office. That is how democracy works. And that is the example we want to set to show that as a system, and I am all about systems, as a system, an institution has been created which is reliable and which can be depended on and which is going to go into elections, I hope. Now, I would even argue that the PNC themselves can't show that they've done that, because the last two internal elections I saw, they had all kinds of problems with allegations of fraud and rigging and that kind of thing. So it seems to me that ANOG seems to be ahead of the game and setting the example to the other parties. I'll also make the point that after the elections, after that last elections, ANOG submitted to GCOM its finances to show how it paid for the election campaign, which is a statutory requirement and nobody else has done. So I want to say to you, and I want to say to the public, that an organization has been created which is trying its best based on a philosophy that is for the good of the country. It's not for self-aggrandizement. It's not to get power. And this is where both PPP and PNC try to shout you down. And this is what I want to talk about, power. People say y'all just want to get into parliament. Well, one of the things that ANOG had agreed on the last go-round, and I don't know if they'll agree this go-round, but I will certainly hope so, and I'll push them as a member. I'll prompt them to continue the intention. We have always said that those people get into parliament.
One sec. Hello, good evening.
Good evening. Could I speak to Mr. Jonas?
Yeah, go ahead. You're live.
Go ahead.
Are you hearing any background?
We can hear you. Yeah.
Yeah, here my problem. I get the NIS problem. And I'm trying to get you long, but...
Well, sorry, I can't deal with that now.
Yeah.
We are on the show, but call, yes.
Yeah, you can call.
Right,
no, thanks.
Thanks for calling. So we had agreed within ANOG that anybody who goes into parliament, first of all, representing ANOG, would not accept a duty-free concession. Now, I feel that's important because one of the rules I would immediately pass if I had any say about laws in parliament, one of the laws I would immediately pass is that no member of parliament or their family or their connections can benefit from any exemption from a tax responsibility that is imposed on the citizens. If you're imposing on a citizen 200 and 300% duty to buy a Land Cruiser, don't give yourself no duty-free concession on the Land Cruiser. You pay 200 and 300%. If we can start doing that, then this glorified assessment of parliamentarians that I see will become real, because at long last the people in parliament will be there to help the country because they will know that the laws they pass apply equally to them. That is one of the key tenets that, for me, must be implemented in Parliament. That those people passing the laws, they must be subject to the laws. And I promise you, if we can get that done with a swing vote, if we can get that done, you will see some fair laws coming out of Parliament. You will suddenly see an even playing field for the local business community. You will see a nice PAYE tax system for the people who are earning less and still got to pay PAYE. You will see NIS paying you instead of this $100,000 cash handout. You will see fair laws being implemented. The tax system, when you want to bring in a vehicle, will be fair. Because if it's not fair, those members of Parliament can't exempt themselves. They will be subject to it. As long as the people in Parliament can protect themselves and insulate themselves by exemptions from the laws that they impose on you, we will have unfair laws. And that is one of another pillar on which ANOG was created that we wanted to implement. I hope that it continues. And what I want to say is, so far, what I've seen in the individuals who have joined ANOG and who are pushing ANOG forward, trying their best by the best of their resources and the best of their abilities, the best of their competencies, they understand this philosophy that we must all be on the same playing field. We must all be level. And they understand that to do that, you first of all cannot link up with any of the two large parties, because to do that will immediately mean you're subsumed and you're susceptible to getting the perks and the handouts. And more than that, they will, I hope, agree that we continue that philosophy that if any of them get into Parliament, they will not be accepting any duty-free concession, they will not be accepting the perks, they will be acting as a broker between the two large parties to ensure that fair laws are passed for the improvement of our systems, so that when you get in your cash from NIS, it is as part of a system in a way that you keep your dignity. When the tax threshold goes up, so that if you're earning $125,000, you're not paying tax, you're getting a subvention from NIS. If you're earning $175,000, maybe you're not getting the subvention, but you're still not paying tax. So the tax threshold can go up to $200,000, and people can start to live. The people at the bottom who need it the most can start to benefit from the oil and gas, rather than this arbitrary money for farmers, money for Gaisuko, money for, right now, $100,000, money for households, and now $100,000 for each person. The systems need to be more clear. And if you have a minority government, it can be done. And this is what I want to say to Guyanese. So ANOG remains as a system. It's an institution. There is a new executive that is hardworking and enthusiastic. Kian and I sit back as members, and we therefore have the freedom to discuss third parties because we're not speaking for ANOG. And I want that to be clear. We are speaking as two citizens who want the best for this country and feel that there is a way to achieve it at long last. Because the demography of the PNC and the PPP means that they are closely balanced. They are cancelling each other out.
I can jump into something and say, good evening.
Hi, good evening. Wonderful show.
Thank you. How are you?
Okay, I'm just going to get straight to the point. My question is regarding Dr. Ashkitu's illegal occupation of the seat.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I've known Arnold to have many prominent liars, including Mr. Timothy Jonas, who's also in the senior counsel title. Why is it that, or why can't Arnold take to the court GCOM or the speaker? Or is that something in the pipeline?
Excellent.
That's a
fantastic question. All right, we can cut up, but we'll answer right now. Okay. Thanks for calling in.
Let me answer that question. I've said it.
Go for it.
Thank you for that question.
Yeah.
It's
where
I wanted to go, and it needs to be said clearly to everybody. When we made this agreement, it was called a memorandum of understanding because it was not enforceable. Look, thank you for the compliment about, senior counsel and being a lawyer and a good lawyer and all of that. But people will come into my office with a problem, and I will say to them, I'm sorry. If I were you, I would not go to court because I don't see you winning. I don't see you have an enforceable claim. I don't see you have a good case. There's a difference between a lawyer and a magician. And from the outset, we had said, this is a gentleman's agreement. It is a handshake arrangement. And it is not enforceable. You can't go to court to sue to enforce it. Now, when the problem with Asha came up, what happened is that Lennox deferred to Asha, and she went in and then refused to come out. So Lennox kept his word. Asha did not. And it was at that stage that I looked at the law, read up on the legislation and that kind of thing to see what was involved, and realized that Lennox should have kept the seat for the whole time. So the reason that for the past 18 months that Asha has been in there unlawfully, the reason that we did nothing is because we knew, and the memorandum of understanding was clear, it could not be enforced in law. We can't do anything about it. Now, I'm not going to give free legal advice on this forum because somebody might sue me if I'm wrong, but I do hope that at some point Lennox gets some advice and Lennox tries to do something about it. Yeah. But we did nothing because we knew from the outset. Gentleman's agreement, memorandum of understanding is, by its very words, the memorandum of understanding implies this thing's not enforceable. Yeah. And that was the position.
I also want to be clear. I know Tim gave legal advice like a lawyer there discussing that matter, but I also do want to make it clear that ANUG, as the Constitution dictates, followed all the procedure and that we are aware of and that we could have in order to have or assist for Asha Kissoon to be removed. Now, why I say ANUG? Because at the time, it was ANUG that was moving to go into the seat next. And
let me interrupt you. I'm sorry, Kian. Kian's right. We did everything that we could to try to fix the problem. Mm-hmm. But here's the thing. If you are not aggrieved, if no wrong has been done to you, because you shouldn't be there at all anyway, Lennox should be there. It's for the person who is aggrieved to do something. So we left it alone. We took that decision.
One second. Hello. Good night. Hello. Sorry, we run out of time, so I don't want to waste time. Listen,
right. So the decision was taken last year. We will do nothing because we are not the people who are to do something. And for that reason, we left it alone. We are sorry that the people involved didn't keep their promise. But here's the truth. They are not us. 3 separate parties made an arrangement that was a handshake, gentleman's agreement that all of them knew could not be enforced. We relied on promises. And that is what it was. That is what it was recognized from the beginning. And that's how it ended. If someone doesn't keep their promise at that stage, well, that's the end of it.
So it was a tactical strategy. And we have to discuss, it's not that we believed in promises. It's understanding at the end of the day that in order for us to even have gotten this seat, these deals had to have been made. The reality is the deal was a success. Okay? Anug, the joinder, ended up with a seat in Parliament that we would not have had if it wasn't for the joinder. None of the parties would have gotten in. So the reality is it was a successful idea. But unfortunately, Ms. Asha Kissoon was dishonest in this narrative. Now, I just want to make something very clear, okay? Because I know we're running out of time quickly. Let me make something very clear here. I listened to the Jagdeo press conference yesterday, and it was asked what his position is with Ms. Asha Kissoon in Parliament. The Vice President turned and said, he doesn't care. Not his problem. That is for GCOM and Parliament to deal with. Now, here's my problem with that. Although that is true, it is for GCOM and Parliament to agree with, to deal with. I'm sorry. For someone that can sit down there and watch the Constitution of Guyana be broken, and somebody to be illegally sitting in Parliament and decide that is not his problem, somebody that's there for the best of all Guyanese, to decide that the Constitution is being broken in Guyana, that's not my problem, that should in itself show you the PPP's position with anything. If they are not benefiting from it, they don't care. And that in reality to me now is understanding, because I have to stick this pin in here, Tim. The Speaker of Parliament, whose position it is now to remove Asha Kissoon from Parliament, who has the authority to do that based on the Constitution of the country, is a PPP person. He was put in place by the PPP majority government. Him not removing Asha Kissoon means that the PPP does not want to remove Asha Kissoon. Okay, that is clear as day. So if you have any questions when it comes to why Asha Kissoon has not left Parliament, it has nothing to do with court and who hasn't gone and sued who, or who hasn't gone and taken this to a judge. It has to do with the fact that Parliament is an independent institution. The majority is run by PPP. They have the majority of seats in Parliament. They chose the Speaker, who is a PPP, and they have decided not to remove Asha Kissoon because they have the authority and the power to do so, strictly based on the fact that Asha Kissoon is sitting there illegally.
There's one thing I'll say about that, I'm learning more and more that when we're speaking ad hoc, like we are now, often you say something in a way that is received in a way that it isn't intended. Mm-hmm. So when Mr. Jagdeo says he doesn't care about that, that sounded flippant, but I hesitate to judge him for that. Because the fact is he can't do anything about it. He can't do anything about it. Mm-hmm. And maybe it's true that he doesn't care one way or another anyway.
But I disagree with what you're saying. But PPP controls the Speaker. Why can't the Speaker remove her?
Well, you are making a jump, and I do agree the PPP appointed Mr. Nadir, and Mr. Nadir can certainly take a stronger position than he's taking. I agree with that. Mm-hmm. But I'm talking about Jagdeo's statement. If Mr. Jagdeo says, I don't care about it, he's really saying he can't do anything about it, and maybe he can't. And the fact is that I've learned...
I'm going to disagree with you, but go on.
I've learned that when people are speaking from the cuff, when people are speaking ad hoc, often they put things over in a way that is wider or larger or more casual than it is intended. And I didn't judge him for that particular statement. There are a lot of things he says I don't agree with, but that particular one, I would step back and say, okay, he said it, but I agree it's not his problem. These are the institutions that should be dealing with their issues, and they're not. Okay. But I agree that we have an infringement of the rules. We have an infringement of the law. We have someone who is barefaced in defying everything, and no one is taking a stand about it. And that's a shame. And at our leadership level and at GCOM level and at the level of the Speaker who has received communication, it's too bad that no one has done anything. I hope that Lennox steps in. But again, there's nothing to be done, at least from our point of view. Our point of view, absolutely. ANOG can do nothing because it was a gentleman's agreement. You relied on a promise and a handshake. And if someone doesn't keep their promise, that doesn't reflect on you, it reflects on them. But I don't know if you're versed enough or you're willing to give your opinion on it. But my question to you is, can the Speaker remove Ms. Asha Kissoon in accordance with the Constitution of Guyana currently? I think, first of all, I don't want to give advice, so let me put this proviso. Please don't rely on what I'm saying. Please don't treat it as gospel. If you want advice, go and retain a lawyer and pay for it. But I believe that it would need Lennox's involvement at this stage, and I hope he does get involved. Okay, good. Very good. All right. Well, at this point in time, guys, I think the next question that has to be asked, because this is a question that's burning around society. Again, was brought up again in the Vice President's press conference. He has stated that at this point in time, there is a coordinated effort to discredit GCOM before our next election. Now, I want to make something very, very clear to the public here, and I'm going to go after it again. Take it how you want it, make your assumptions, be what on any side you want to be, and interpret it however you want. The reality is, when the 2020 attempted rigging happened, and everyone realized that we are at the whim and mercy of GCOM, which is politicized by 3 people from the PPP on one side and 3 people from the PNC on one side and 1 chairman in the middle, okay? And the PPP, during that election saga, went after GCOM, all right? Stating that they need to do X, Y, Z, they need to step in and stop PNC APNU from rigging the election, and GCOM is flawed and there's an issue in the system and it has to be fixed. Again, because both Tim and I were intricately part of this fight for democracy in 2020 during the elections. Okay, we were there with ballot box, we were there against GCOM. Tim was part of the court cases against all that was going on. Now, let me make something very clear to the public. Nothing
Absolutely nothing has changed in GCOM. Not a law. The PPP has done nothing to change the system in GCOM from the attempted rigging in 2020 to now. Now that the PPP are in power, they have decided that they're going to leave the system as is. Again, leaving us susceptible to what happened in 2020 again.
The one thing that has changed, which is woefully insufficient, is concentrating on Region 4, which is the most populous, and recognizing that a single person in Region 4 was able to upend the apple cart completely.
Yeah.
They divided Region 4 into two, so that instead of one returning officer for Region 4, there are now two. So instead of one, at the time it was Mingo, instead of one, they have divided it into two. That's insufficient. But we have said publicly, we've posted it when we asked for comments for the government, we wrote the government, and my position is, and I hope that it continues to be the position of the third parties, the system for the most part worked. The way to avoid individuals, corrupt individuals in the system from undermining it, is that each of those places of poll, each of those 1,900 or whatever places of poll there are, as soon as their statement of poll is produced at the end of the day, is counted and signed off by the two officers, it needs to go by WhatsApp, it needs to go online to every single media house, it needs to be posted on the GCOM website so that the whole country sees that the Buxton Secondary School place of poll, that is their statement of poll. The Lenora, the LBI Secondary School where you're going to vote, that is their statement of poll. If all of those statements of poll are posted online immediately they are signed, then there's no chance of some secret shuffling so that they can be counted in a central place like happened at the building in Avinash building. And you get blackout and you get bomb scare and you get all kind of problems and you get bedsheet issues. There can be no problem with that because the whole country will already know, because it's up online, what the statement of poll is. The same day, the same night, you will see it up online. And that steals the thunder of anybody who tries to pretend that he's counting different numbers from what is posted, visible to everybody who accesses the website, to the media houses who can count immediately and give you the result in less than 10 hours.
Yeah.
That is the way to do it. And if that is done, all our other problems will fade away.
Yeah. Guys, on that note, I'm sorry, we do have to head off. This is a very interesting show that we're going to try to continue next week because I think there's a lot more to be said on GCOM and the current scenario that, voters lists being bloated, the questions that are being raised about biometrics. I think there's a lot of conversation to be had here before moving into the next election.
Now, two things I'd like to say, yes. First of all, the trolls will be trolls and they will comment. But there are some real people who comment on this program. And if there's a topic that you wish to be addressed, please raise it. Please let us know. And if we can answer, we will. If we can do a show on it, we will. Because we are going into a stage in Guyana that all of these issues need to be aired and discussed and solutions found.
Sorry, guys. We are out of time here. Sorry I can't take your call. But next week we will be here to within our hour to try again. All right, guys? On that note, please have a very safe weekend. I know the rain, Guyanese, our snow has started. So the roads are wet now. And
Snow.
Yeah. So I'm asking everyone to just be a little bit cautious out there, a little bit extra cautious out there. And the roads are going to get hectic now because of Christmas as well.
Yeah.
So I am sorry. Sorry, guys.
Careful.
My apologies. I hope you all have a wonderful weekend. Thank you for listening, and we will be back here next week on Apolitically Incorrect. Take care, everyone.